Good morning.
Good morning.
Did you have a good week in the Lord? I asked Ben that. He said, I tried. Boy, if that don't sum it up. But we did get good news, Sister Susan. When I got that initial text about the prognosis there in the beginning, boy, that just stuck me right there. And I'm glad it did, because it burdened me to do what I needed to do. Pain drives us to Him, don't it? When we're faring well, most of the time we're not faring well. And we continue here in 2 Samuel chapter 18. Good to see Brother Levi with us this morning. And Sarah and Elijah. And Miss Linda. And the rest of you. And even Brother Harold. We continue looking here at this battle that's formed, or that's shaping up into a battle. We've been following this for a while here with Absalom pursuing David. He's running him out of the city. Where David fled the city, he said to spare the city of the sword. Let's not fight here. He doesn't really say why he didn't take him on there, other than said he wanted to spare the city of the sword. But they've gone basically as far as they can go without leaving the country. They crossed the river. They're over in the wood of Ephraim. And Absalom has pursued them to this point. So David divides the army into three and decides to face Absalom at this point. Now, Absalom is not a warrior. He's a palace dweller. Where David spent all those years running from Saul and trusting in the Lord, talking about pain driving you to the Lord. I look back at some of the worst times in my life really were my best times spiritually. And some of the best times in my life were some of my worst times spiritually, because I didn't need Him. Lord, I got this. You just sit right here in the passenger seat and watch what I can do. Now, we know David's here because of his sin. But what fascinates me is God fights for him anyway. And this encouraged me whenever I studied this. And we're going to look back at another pattern where God did this. But let's pick it up here in verse 6 of 18. So the people went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was in the wood of Ephraim, where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David, and there was a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men. Sad, isn't it? Men following a man. Not God's chosen man. For the battle was there scattered all over the face of all the country, and the wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Now, I want you to think about that, and that's what I want to talk about this morning. The wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Who was fighting this? Now, David's always had a small remnant with him. The majority were not with him. I don't know if he had 20,000 men with him. Probably not. But here we have a man that has committed adultery. A man that has murdered another man so that he can take his wife. But God's fighting for him. So I want to encourage you, if you think, now listen, David has repented. And David is being obedient again. He's not living in open, willful sin. Absalom, on the other hand, is a rebellious child. He does not savor the things of God. And I think, just like we talked about with Ahithophel, they thought that God had abandoned them. God will not abandon us in our sin. I was telling you some of my best times in my life were my worst times spiritually. Guess what? God didn't abandon me. And the providence of God and the sovereignty of God plays out here. The wood devoured more than the sword. No flesh shall glory in my presence. Don't turn there, but Proverbs 18:6 or Proverbs 16:9 says, "A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps." Proverbs 16:9. A man deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps. It's amazing to me that God's sovereignty does not interfere with our liberty. And it also doesn't remove us from our responsibility. Isn't that fascinating how infinite that is? But if we're where we're supposed to be, He'll take that and use it. Go to Joshua chapter 10. Here again is a man that's made a mistake. Have y'all made any mistakes lately? My wife made one several years ago. Listen, I love we can see the forgiveness and the mercy of God here. Joshua made a covenant with these people. God told them when they were to go into the land, they would drive out the inhabitants of the land. And they didn't seek His wisdom and direction, and they made a covenant with the Gibeonites. Well, the Amorites heard about it, and they didn't like it. So they come down there to whoop up on them. And they sent and said, "Joshua, we need some help. We need some help." Let's pick this up in verse 10 here. "And the Lord discomfited them before Israel and slew them." All right, let's back up verse 9. "Joshua therefore came unto them suddenly and went up from Gilgal all night. And the Lord discomfited them before Israel and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up from Beth Horon, and smote them to Azekah and unto, however you say that, Makkedah. And it came to pass as they fled before Israel and were in the going down before Beth Horon, that the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died there. And there were more which died from the hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword." With the sword. Look at verse 14. "And there was no day like that before it." Now we know in the previous verses there, Joshua asked God to hold the sun still and to hold the moon in place. Stop the earth. One man prayed, a man that had just made a mistake. He's in this because of his mistakes. You ever been there? God didn't abandon him. Hallelujah. Listen, I guarantee you before next Friday, I'm going to be made at least one mistake. But you know what? I can look down there and I can say, "And the Lord fought for me." If I'm truly obedient, if I'm truly honoring Him, despite the jam that I got myself into, if I'll go to Him and say, "Hey," because of His providence, the Lord directed His steps. Listen, we're not always going to get what we want. We were supposed to be in West Virginia this morning. Yeah. We were. We had planned it out. We were going to be there for Father's Day to spend it with Brother Danny. And things changed. We don't know why yet. I took Melissa come there the other day when everything was just unraveling, and she looked like a cat that was having a bad hair day. And she looked at me, she said, this is a trial, isn't it? This is a test, isn't it? I said, that's exactly what this is. See, we want to take God's providence when things are good. And we don't want to take it when it's bad. But there's a reason. There is a reason. Listen, Joshua's prayer to God there, when he asked for the sun and the moon to hold still, he knew that God was the only one who was going to win that battle. It wasn't going to be their military might or their superiority or their cunningness that was going to win the battle. Have you ever come through a trial and when you got to the other side of it, you don't know how you did it? I can tell you how you did it. He fought for us. The wood devoured more than the sword that day. I want to close with Psalms chapter 37. I love this chapter because it reminds us not to fret because of evildoers. You get looking in this world nowadays, it does look like evil's triumphing, doesn't it? It looks like the world is winning. But are they? What he just sang out of Revelation said the Lord created all things. Listen, it's not a deity. He's not somebody that built all this and walked away. He is involved in everything. He allowed Job to be whipped up on by the devil. He's allowed some of my loved ones to go on before I wanted them to go. But has he ever made a mistake? No, but I have. And who am I to tell him how to run things? I can't even run things around the house right. Make a mess of it. But I'm going to tell him how to run the universe. Let's look here in verse, I think it's 25. Let's back up to verse 23 because I read you that thing out of Proverbs. I want to read it again to you. A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps. Now look here in verse 23 of Psalms 37. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand. Make a mistake, have you been utterly cast down? The Lord fought for him, both men. Joshua made a mistake. We don't really think about Joshua making much mistakes, do we? But the Lord fought for him. David had made a terrible blunder, but the Lord fought for him. Verse 25 here, familiar passage. I have been young, and now am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. Be still and know that I'm God this week. Even if you've got into your jam for your own doings, hand it back over to him. Get out of the driver's seat. Get back over there in the passenger seat where you belong. And don't think, I've messed this up so bad there ain't no fixing. Because we've got two instant, listen, this is here for our encouragement. Like I said, it's encouraged me. Because I know I can look back through my life and see some blunders and some messes that I've made. And I know I'm still going to have to pay for some of that. It's like I said, it's my responsibility. But even in that, God fought for these men because they were repentant and obedient. They realized they had made a mistake. They acknowledged what they had done. And they turned to Him. Farther along, we'll know all about it. Farther along, we'll understand why we couldn't be in West Virginia this Sunday. Who knows, brother? farther along, I'll know why I'm at the end of this road, dirt road this morning, rather than where I was. Cheer up, my brother. Walk in the sunlight. Listen, there's a lot of things going to happen to us we might not understand. I love that. I think it's in James, isn't it, where it says, when you fall into divers temptations, be of good cheer. And then later on down it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask. Think about those preceding verses. He's talking about all the things you're going through. If you don't understand why that's going on, maybe you should ask. Maybe you should ask. I love y'all. Remember, the wood devoured more than the sword. The Lord will fight for you. I love you. May the Lord bless you.